Oh, my name is Nancy Moldari, and I'm a member of First Parish Church. I'm here today to interview our new minister.
And I'm the Rev Dr Cynthia Landrum. I go by Cindy, and I'm the new minister here at the First Parish Church of Stowe and Acton.
All right. Well, we have a few questions here for you.
Great.
I hope that you'll enjoy answering the questions. And we'd like to know a brief biography of you, to find out your background.
Sure. I was raised mostly in Michigan, and I grew up Unitarian Universalist, which is something that's only true for a certain percentage of UUs. And I attended the Birmingham Unitarian Church in the Detroit area. Went off to college and then got a master's in English down in Georgia, and then to seminary at Meadville Lombard Theological School in Chicago, which is one of 2 UU seminaries in the country, along with Harvard has a historical UU connection as well. And then since becoming a minister, I've served churches in Texas and previously in Massachusetts and then in Michigan for the last 14 years, where I served a church in the Jackson, Michigan area. And the other thing I should say about my biography is that I have a husband, Peter Morrison, who's from Rhode Island, and so he's somewhat local-ish to this area, and we have a 14-year-old daughter.
Very nice. Well, let's go on and get a little bit more information from you. What attracted you to ministry?
To ministry,
yes,
as a profession? You know, it was more that what pushed me away from it for a while. My father was the first person to say, you should think about becoming a UU minister. And I say that the fact that he said that first made me take another 5 years before I thought of it for myself, because, you know, I have to rebel against my parents somewhat. But ultimately, I think of myself as a strong generalist. I was always interested in doing lots of different things. I was interested in, as an undergrad, I was in English and psychology, and because I couldn't decide, right? I loved literature and I loved writing. I also loved talking to people and doing counseling type of work. And when I finally realized that ministry was the profession that brought those 2 things and the social justice work that I love so much all together in one profession, I decided I'm going to give this a shot.
And so that was kind of like your aha moment?
Yeah, there wasn't one
slow
big aha moment.
Yeah.
In fact, it was really after I was in seminary, and I guess my little aha moment then, I was trying this out to see if it was the right profession for me, was realizing that the type of writing that I had been doing as an English major was sermon writing all along. And that while I struggled in academia, because I wanted to write things that had an element of hope or had a prophetic call in them, that was sermon writing. And so it was in seminary when everything that I was doing, it was like, aha, this is the right profession for me.
So did you keep any of those writings and help you out with a sermon or 2?
Oh yeah, they're all on file.
Okay.
I have since I was 14 years in my last congregation, and I rarely, almost never repeated a sermon, twice or 3 times in 14 years. I have a pretty good catalog of sermons to draw from. Now, you're not going to see me preaching the exact same sermon here ever, because this is a different context. But are there paragraphs I can pull from? Sure.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, sure.
Yes. Well, what attracted you to our church?
Everything. I had a checklist of things that I was looking for, and FPC met every single one. I mean, this church is top-notch, excellent congregation. When I was looking for a church that had a strong religious education program with a great religious educator, you've got that. I was looking for a church that was engaged in social justice and taking stands on things like Black Lives Matter, and you were doing that. And I was looking for a church that had beautiful, wonderful, dynamic music programs so that would enliven the worship experience, and you have that. I was looking for a church with a strong history of good ministry, and you have that in your predecessor. Your minister emeritus, Tom Rosiello, had a wonderful, strong, happy, good relationship here, and that was something that attracted me. I was looking for excellent staff, you have that. I was looking for lots of kids, you have that. You know, every single mark, and a beautiful building. You know.
Thank you. And as far as I know, the checklist for you was yes, 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 all the way.
Yes, yes, yes,
so
all
it
the
was
way down.
It was bound to happen.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you've thought about this. Do you think more women are being drawn into the ministry?
Well, it was early in my ministry, over a decade ago, that Unitarian Universalism became the first denomination in the country to have over 50% women ministers. And at that time, I think I still thought that it was going to balance out to like 50-50 because we were seeing a lot of women coming in as a second career who hadn't felt ministry was an option for them in their first career. Now we're over that bubble, and what it seems to be is, yes, we still have more and more women in Unitarian Universalist ministry.
Why do you think that is?
I don't really know. I do know that even though that's the case, we're still hitting a lot of firsts. I'm the first female settled minister of this congregation,
That's right.
even in its hundreds of years of history. And so I think that it's still almost too new of a trend to really say why. I could speculate about feminization of professions or nurturing professions, but all these things have made it a great profession for men as well. So I don't know.
Well, your bio says that your beliefs, you draw your beliefs from many religions.
Yeah.
And could you tell us a few of the religions and
Yeah, I'm
what you draw
a
from?
humanist and an agnostic, but one who sees themselves as very spiritual, even mystical, and who is still searching and open to the universe or God revealing themselves in a number of different ways. And so I draw a lot from the Christian traditions because while I was raised UU, my parents were Christian UUs, still are, and they raised me with Bible stories and the Christian traditions and holidays, and so that's the language that I'm seeped the most in and that I draw from the most as a cultural reference point. If I'm telling you a religious story, it's going to more often be from the Bible than anywhere else, but I also see paganism and Wicca as very important to me. My husband was involved in the Wiccan tradition for a period of time, and I looked into it in periods of my life too and found a great harmony in the way it works with the rhythms of nature, and the cycle of the seasons are part of the natural religious year in Wicca, and so that is something that I draw from as well. And then probably the third religion that I draw the most from is Buddhism, just because it's mindfulness practices, and I would say I draw from it more in terms of practice, that the mindfulness practice and meditation are something that I will turn to and that I use a lot in counseling. So when people come to me with stress and anxiety, I'll talk to them, you'll hear me often talk about meditation techniques and how to go focus deep in that way.
That's very good. What is your main role as a minister, do you think, at First Parish?
Well, at First Parish, we're really blessed with a great staff that takes on a lot of the roles that in smaller churches that I've been a part of were part of the ministry. And so I can really turn my attention here to being the spiritual and religious leader for the congregation, with the support of all of our staff and committees and structures in the church that do a lot of the other work of the church. And so I see the primary functions being preacher and pastor, that you need someone who's going to be a strong worship leader and someone who is going to do rites of passage to an increasingly aging congregation, although we have plenty of young people as well, but we have a lot of older members, and so ministering to them through all the rites of passage of a lifetime is part of the work of a minister, and then being a prophetic voice in the community and casting a vision for what the future will bring. This month's theme is vision, so I've got vision on the mind. That's my sermon topic for this Sunday.
This almost, what you said, this goes right into the next question. And do you see what you see as First Parish's role in the wider community here in Stowe and in the surrounding area.
And that is something I'm still exploring and learning. I'm getting to know the Stowe area and all of its wonderful, delightful things here. I've been posting on Facebook about how I'm exploring one at a time all the apple orchards of Stowe. But this church is doing really good work at being out in its community. I think has a good sense of its vision of social justice and the work that needs to be done. And so we have all these wonderful, rich task forces that focus on things like domestic violence and racial justice and the environment. And then we have our Share the Plate program where the church has laid out through voting on which agencies to share the plate with. You've set out your priorities for saying these are the things that matter to us. So I think it's my work to get to know that, to understand why these partnerships are important to this congregation, and to increase and strengthen our interfaith participation and cooperation around us so that we are doing the work that we're doing in less and less isolation.
Very good.
I know I said I didn't have an answer to that
Yes,
question, but I guess I did.
You certainly did. What do you feel are the main spiritual concerns of our time?
So right now, for progressive communities of faith, there is a real sense of isolation and despair and alienation from our surrounding communities sometimes. And with that too, as people are doing more and more struggling against the direction our country is currently going, there's a lot of burnout. And I see the work of a religious institution in a progressive community right now being the work of nurturing people, sustaining them, giving them hope, giving them courage, reminding them of the motive force of love, feeding their values, and building that community to know that they're not alone in this work that we're doing. So part of the work ahead is work of justice, but more than that, it's the work of caring for each other so that the work of justice can continue. Because while Theodore Parker said the arc of the universe is long, but it bends towards justice, the part that we sometimes forget is the arc of the universe is long before it gets towards justice. And we need sustenance on that arc. And that's the work of the church.
Do you have any favorite religious customs in the UU service?
Well, I introduced this past Sunday the water communion, which was
yes.
something this church used to do but hadn't done for a while.
That's right.
But my favorite UU custom is flower communion, which is usually the first Sunday in June. And it's something that goes back to Norbert Chopek, who was a Czech Unitarian.
Yes.
And I'm really excited that this church has a historical connection to that service, in that one of the earlier ministers here was someone who knew Chopek and was part of those first flower communions. And so I'm looking forward to seeing how flower communion is different, and I think it will be different and deeper and authentically ours here in a way that will be exciting for me.
It is a special time for us,
Yeah.
the flower communion.
And the thing that I've never experienced before that's a tradition here that I'm looking forward to is the Mummers play. Like, I do not know what this is about. It sounds really big and fantastic, and it sounds like a big production. And I really am looking forward to seeing what that is like.
Yeah, it takes time.
And I think that's December 16th.
We have a rich musical
Yes.
element here.
Yes.
And do you have any strong feelings about music and about the role music plays?
I am not a musician in the sense of playing an instrument, although I was someone who was in choirs my whole growing up. So I was in the University of Michigan Women's Glee Club when I was at University of Michigan. When I went to grad school at University of Georgia, I was in their Women's Glee Club. And so music is really important to me. I would say it's the one time in the worship service when I worship, because I'm leading things the other times, but as I said to the choir this Sunday after their anthem, that they took me to church. And I really meant that was a spiritual moment for me. We are blessed to have such a rich, dynamic music program here. My daughter is looking forward to playing with our ukulele group, the Unitarians. I love jazz. Jazz is my favorite, my father's favorite type of music, and I was steeped in it growing up. And that we have our own jazz group here is really cool. The coffee houses are something I'm looking forward to too.
Exciting, yeah.
I'm very excited about the rich music here, and I'm not someone who's going to get to take a lot of credit for it. It's something that's going to go on without me because I'm not the director of that, and I'm just really glad to be able to partake in it and that it's part of our worship and part of our life here.
Well, I've heard something about Zentangles
Right.
with you.
Yeah.
And so I would like you to tell us about your 2 books of Zentangle mandalas.
Yeah, so actually it was a friend of mine who lives in Grafton here who introduced me to Zentangle, which is a spiritual practice of spiritual doodling. And so it's a mindfulness practice, it's a spiritual practice, and it's an artistic practice. And I was at her house and she had some stuff laying around, and it said, she had a box of pens that said Zentangle and a notebook that said Zentangle. I said, what is this thing? And she showed me it, and I thought, I could do that. So I just started doodling these Zentangle drawings, and I started doodling a lot of Zentangle chalices, and then I put them up on Facebook. And one of my Facebook friends said, actually she's one of the UUA's regional staff members in the Metro New York area, she said to me, you should make a coloring book. And I was like, yeah, I'll get to that. And then she's like, no, really, you should make a coloring book. And I'm like, yeah, okay, I'll make a coloring book someday. And then she said, if you make a coloring book, I will sell it at the Liberal Religious Educators Association meeting next fall. And I was like, okay, I will make a coloring book. And she helped me put it together and everything. And so actually she printed them up at like Staples or something. So we just did it as like, I gave her a Word file and she put it together and sold it. And she sold like 100 copies or something at that one conference. And then she took it to the UUA bookstore and said, you should have this available through the UUA bookstore. And so then the UUA bookstore ordered a bunch of them. And next thing I knew, here I was like an author of a coloring book.
And so do we have it if we go into the UUA bookstore?
They still have some of the first volume, and the second volume I haven't gotten put on the UUA bookstore yet. I put it out through lulu.com, so if you go to Lulu and Google my name, and it's just, the first one is mostly chalices, and the second one is mostly mandalas, and they're just coloring.
That sounds wonderful.
I don't know really how they are.
Fell into that.
I just fell into it, yeah. And then I started making jewelry with my patterns on it too. I'm not wearing one today, but and started selling them at the UU summer camp I go to, and yeah, I like to joke that all of a sudden I'm an artist.
Yes, you have a creative outlet
I'm
for yourself too.
Yeah.
Yes.
And it's something I can do anytime. I mean, you can do it while you're watching TV, which is not as mindful as it could be, but and sometimes I can do it while I'm in a meeting too, to just kind of help me focus. But a lot of times I just like to try and find a quiet time, and sometimes I do it while I'm thinking of someone with, maybe someone with a pastoral care need, maybe a friend or family member who needs some energy sent to them, and I'll think about them while I'm doodling something.
Well, that's very impressive.
Thanks.
Now, we wish you here, wish you to have a good time, not a good time.
I'm having a great time so far.
Yeah, well, it sounds like you are. We wish you the best.
Thanks.
And coming to Stowe is a wonderful happening for us.
Thank you.
And I told you I might say this to you, and you said it was okay, so I'll say live long and prosper.
Live long and prosper.
Right. Thank you.
Thank you.